family grave is just a million times worse in the sense that it's really difficult to get to. You have to, because we've not only got the Dickens family here, and you will see one of its members when we go into the, well, you won't see her, his daughter, but you will see her coffin. Also, and remind me as we're walking down from Michael Faraday, we have Dickens' nephew, who is the model for Tiny Tim. Dickens' nephew was born with congenital limp and gave the idea, apparently he was a very winning child, liked to ride around on his dad's shoulders. So Tiny Tim is buried here, Dickens' nephew. But this is the Rossetti family. Now, no one was more famous in mid-Victorian times, the late 19th century, than the Rossettis. They were part of a revolutionary group of painters that called the Pre-Raphaelites, who had started just a new way of painting. Now, if you know anything about painting, I know not very much, but I do know I love the Pre-Raphaelites. Their paintings jump out at you. But the star of virtually most of their paintings, if it has a woman in it, is a lady called Lizzie Siddal. She's here, Elizabeth. Where is she? She's down here, Elizabeth. Anyway, she's there. Elizabeth worked as a milliner. She worked in a sort of dress shop in the Strand and was by all accounts drop-dead gorgeous. Apparently some men couldn't speak in her presence. She was beautiful beyond compare, and she had this unbelievable red hair. Now, if any of you can think of a wonderful picture, famous painting done by a chap called Millet, Ophelia from Hamlet, the lady who's floating, there's a picture of it in the chapel if you want to. That is Lizzie, and so many of the Pre-Raphaelite. If there's a woman in it, it's Lizzie. They all fell in love with her. But Dante Gabriel Rossetti, one of the painters, he married her. Christina Rossetti is in this grave. She was a famous poet. The trouble was that Dante was, Gabriel Rossetti was, he was a drug addict. I don't think he paid too much attention to Lizzie. She got pregnant, lost the baby, got very depressed, had been suggested she take laudanum, you know, to relieve her depression, which is a very, very heavy drug and a very dangerous one. It's debatable whether she took an accidental overdose, but she had been talking of suicide. She was very depressed, and so she did die, and she was buried here. Apparently Dante Gabriel Rossetti, well, more than apparently, he must have been, because he, in his grief, he had this burst of energy, wrote these beautiful and quite erotic, apparently, love poems to this gorgeous woman. The world's first supermodel is how she's been described, because everyone would have known her image. And he had these poems in the manuscript form. There were no copies, buried, nestling in this gorgeous red hair in her coffin. About 7 years later, when he's had a writer's block, and he's thinking, I'll never write anything, never better again, he thinks, I know, let's dig her up and get them back. Absolutely astounding. And if he hadn't been Dante Gabriel Rossetti, because he had to go to the Home Secretary for a special order for an exhumation, there has to be a very good reason to dig somebody up. I can't imagine anybody else would have been granted permission, because he's left a few poems. Can he just dig somebody? Anyway, permission was granted. Rossetti was a very powerful, influential, certainly famous person. Late at night, a couple of people in his employ came up here. They lit a big bonfire here to give them warmth and light. They dug up Lizzie, opened her coffin, took out the manuscript. Apparently, so the story goes, I wasn't there, but I don't know, it's a nice one to believe, and there were several witnesses to it. She was, of course, with the lead lining, probably very well preserved, so she looked just as beautiful. But what was remarked upon is that her hair had kept on growing and had filled, her tresses filled the coffin. Amazing. So anyway, Lizzie goes back down in the hole again, and Dante publishes his poems. They were a bit too rich for most people, because they were not meant for publication. They were actually quite erotic, you know, in his recollections of their lovemaking. I won't go into it, it's Sunday, but that's the story of the Rossettis. And if you can't think what she looks like, before you go, look in the chapel, and we've got just a print from Tate Modern. No, sorry, Tate Britain. It's Tate Britain is the original. If you haven't seen it, there's a whole gallery. There's more. There's several rooms of Pre-Raphaelite paintings which are just gorgeous. And this is the most gorgeous one, and she's the most gorgeous person. Poor old Lizzie, the world's first supermodel.